and this is Tricia, and welcome to my channel. Today I'm going to be making a baby Star Wars inspired baby quilt. Let me show you what the supplies are going to be so we can get started. Alright everyone, let me start out by saying this is not going to have any Star Wars characters in the blanket. I am merely using the little characters for color inspiration. Now I have something here that I printed out, and I used this last Tuesday to make a crib mobile. So if you want to check that out, I did characters that were similar to these on this little paper, but now I'm just going to be using it for color inspiration. Okay, so you're going to need something like that, inspiration colors for your picking of your fabrics for your quilt. So let's talk about the tools. I have a cutting mat here on my table. You need something like this or maybe a little bit smaller. Of course, you're going to need a rotary cutter to cut out your fabrics. I've got some scissors here, and then very important is that you also need some other additional cutting tools such as these measuring quilting squares and the quilting ruler. Now I am by no means a quilting expert, but I have done some quilts and they have been just homemade for my family and they've enjoyed them. So this is why I decided to go ahead and continue making one for my little grandson. Now I've already made one for him, but this is going to be in the theme for the room, and it's really going to be decorative. I've also got these smaller little scissors just in case I need those. Of course I need a sewing machine, I need some thread, and then I'm going to be using these quilters pins. They're nice flat pins so that I can use my measurements and my cutting tools and make sure that I don't, bump into anything. So these are awesome. So make sure you get yourself some of those flat pins. I'm also going to be using an iron, and I've got a little board here that I've created for myself. It's a piece of wood, and then I've just put some batting on it and then some fabric over it. As you can see here, it's been well used. A little bit burned, a little bit torn, but I love using it. So this is what I've created for myself for ironing small little items as quilting squares, and that's very important that you iron them. Now you could use some starch when you're ironing, but I just used water, so I have some water here and a little pump spray. Okay, so I also need some polyfill. This is a quilters or quilt batting, and this particular one is a small. This is for lap blankets and crib size projects. This is a 45 by 60 and it's a low loft. So that's what I'm going to be using for the little quilt. Let me show you the fabrics that I have chosen. Let's pull these out of the way. Okay. These are my chosen fabrics. So let me bring down the camera just a little bit lower so that you can see them a little bit better. Alright, as I said, I've got these little characters for color inspiration, and as you can see here, I've got lots of the colors that are found in here. I don't have any whites. I'm not going to use any whites, but I do have this one here that does have white in it, and I thought that was enough. The other thing that's going to be used in the room is a lot of like stars and like galaxy type of patterns. So I've got these nice fabrics here. This one I'm going to be using some of it in the quilt, but I'm also going to be using it, I believe, in the little curtain for the room. And then I also want to do a little pillow. So I have plenty of fabrics here to work with. I really like this one. See, it's got little stars on it. These are all quilters cottons, by the way. Look at this one. I picked this one out because it's got this interesting pattern, and I thought it was a little bit, kind of a Star Wars ship kind of looking, like the walls in the spaceship, if you want to, I don't know how else to put it, but here's a nice green color. It's got some little polka dots, but I thought it was really nice, like Yoda color, so that's pretty cute. And I've already shown you this one. And then I chose this brown one because there is some brown in Yoda, and then there's also Chewbacca, who also has some brown. So I thought it was nice to incorporate that. There's a tiny bit of red in there, like in the lightsabers and such. There's also green in the lightsaber, and there's also blue in the lightsaber. So I thought a little bit of red. I don't know which one exactly I'm going to use. I'm kind of veering towards this one because, again, it has sort of a little gadget kind of look to it. And then I chose this black, even though it's got some glitter on there, because I wanted to incorporate that into the blanket. There is a little bit of glittery bits in this one and also in this. They don't all have that, just a few. But like I said, this is going to be a decorative blanket. Alright, and for the other side of my blanket, I've got this really nice plush fabric. It is not very, like fuzzy or anything, but it is super soft. I love it, and it's got these like little stars on it. So I thought that was perfect for the theme. This is going to be on the complete other side of the little blanket. All right, so now let's go ahead and let me show you how I'm going to do the first quilting block. All right, so the quilting block that I have chosen to do is called a night star. Star for the obvious theme reason, and the fabrics that I'm going to be using for that block are going to be these particular ones that I have here. Okay, the main color that I'm going to be using is this one with this galaxy and little Saturn-like looking little details on it. And from this one I am going to cut 4 squares that are 3 7/8 inches, and then I'm going to cut another 4 that are 3 1/2 inches. Now out of these other ones I'm going to cut 2 3 7/8, and then I'm going to cut 2 3 7/8, and then out of this one I'm going to cut 4 3 1/2 inch squares. So let's get to cutting those. So let's do the 4 3 1/2 inch squares that I'm going to cut out of this one and out of this one. All right, so the first thing that I'm doing is that I want to make sure that my edges are nice and straight, and straight cut. So what I've done is I put these edges right along my cutting mat here, my straight line that I've got drawn on here. And then I'm going to go ahead and go on my 10-inch right here. You can use any line that you want to use, on your cutting board. But I'm going to use this 10-inch line right here so that I can cut off this little edge to make sure that I have a nice, even, straight edge to work with and measure from. Get that off. There we go. So now I've got a nice, clean edge to work with here. The next thing I want to do is I want to cut off this here, because this is that little edge on every fabric, and we don't want this. It's sometimes it's a little bit stiffer, but then it also has, sometimes it's either white or it has some sort of print on it, so we want to go ahead and get rid of that. What I'm going to do is I'm going to measure 3 7/8 this way, and then I can worry about cutting off that little edge there. I'm going to go at the 10 here. Make sure it's all nice and straight where I've cut it. Measure up 3 7/8. Okay, and if you look at it, there's 1 2 3 4 5 6 7 8 little lines on here. So obviously I'm going to go up to the 8th one, the 7th one. Right there. I'll line it over here. Okay, anywhere I didn't cut, there we go, just a little thread. Okay, I'm going to start off with that little strip of fabric. I'm going to do the same, whatever I'm doing with this, I'm going to do the same with this one. Now you can always get your little iron ready, your little board ready, and iron these pieces to make sure they're nice and even. Everything's still nice. So I'm going to go ahead and cut off this little edge here that I mentioned. Just making sure everything is straight. I'm going to use this little line here. Get that off. Okay, so now I'm going to cut 3 7/8 this way, and I said I needed 4. Actually, this one I need 3 1/2. So actually I'm going to end up cutting this down a little bit. So this is actually going to be a 3 1/2 inch square. So here's my half. On this one I needed 4. So here I've got 2, but I also need to cut it this way, 3 1/2. So just gotta align my template. Cut off that little bit. So now this is a 3.5 by 3.5, and I've got 2 pieces here. And I need 2 more of those. All right, I've already cut up all the squares that I mentioned I was going to cut out of the fabrics that I pointed out. But I wanted to show you what the block should look like when I'm done with it. And this is what it will look like. It is called a night star. So I said that I was going to cut these dark blue right here out of this fabric right here. Okay, so in the middle I have 4 solid squares. So I need to cut those at 3.5 inches. So I've got those cut out, those 4 right in the middle, 3.5. And then I have another 4 solid squares at every corner, which is 1 there, 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 and there. Sorry, they're 3.5 inch right here. And I'm using this fabric for that. So then I decided that these here, where you see like the halves in dark and then a half in light, like there, I decided that I was going to alternate colors between these 2. So I had 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 squares, but they're halves, so I needed 4 pieces at 3 7/8. And then I decided to do those because I'm going to use 2 different colors. I decided to do 2 and 2 at 3 7/8, and then the other obviously are all in the dark blue. So then I've got 4 at 3 7/8. But I decided that these middle ones here, I decided that I want to do a little pinwheel right in the middle. So then instead of alternating these other ones out here with brown and then green, brown and then green, I'm going to do them all in green. So what I ended up doing, so instead of having these 4 3.5, I'm going to be cutting 4 at 3 7/8 of the blue instead. Let's get this one out of the way. So to have 4 halves, I need 2 pieces. So then I've got 2 here. Let's get these out of the way. And then I've got 2 of the brown, because these other 4, there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 halves, or 4 complete ones, are going to go with this 4 complete ones. So 4 at 3 7/8 of the blue, 4 and 3 7/8 of the green, to make 8 squares on the outside, and the middle pinwheel, 2 at 3 7/8 of the blue, and 2 and 3 7/8 of this tan, to create the 4 little squares in the middle. So let me explain how those are going to happen, how they're going to be cut into little halves. So again, I'm not going to be using this 3.5 anymore, this one in the middle. I'll use these for another project. Now, these blocks, I want to have 4 of them. So all that I've explained here that I've cut, and I'll just say it one more time, these 4 solid ones, we need 4 at 3.5. The whole darkness of the stars here are going to be 6 at 3 7/8, and then for the outer edge ones, I'm going to use 4 at 3 7/8, and then for the middle ones, I'm going to use 2 at 3 7/8. Okay, so there we go to create the whole thing. All right, let's put these aside, and because I want to do 4 complete blocks, I've got everything ready here for a second block, a third block, and a fourth block. So I've already cut all my little pieces. So now what I want to do is I want to start creating these little halfsies, and then of course the middle ones are also going to be halfsies. So we're going to take all of these 3.5, which are not going to be cut or anything. We're going to set those aside. Get this out of the way. And now we want the 4 that are going to be in the middle. We're going to take a right side and a right side and just sandwich them like that and like that. And then I forgot to mention, you're going to need one of these kind of a dressmaker's marking pencil. This is right there, dressmaker marking. It does have like a little, oh sorry, it has like a little brush here, kind of brush it off, but it does kind of just come off on its own. Don't worry about it. It's very light. It's not even going to bother. So what we're going to do with that is we're going to go from one center to one center, because these are going to get made into two individual little squares, and we're going to need to separate them. So we need to know where the center is. So we're going to go from the center to the other center point diagonally, like so, and then just mark it with the pencil so that you can see this line clearly. Now, from that line over, we're going to go a 1/4 inch. So we can use another little measuring thing over here and do a 1/4 inch, like about right there. There we go. And then we're going to mark that with our pencil. And then on the other side, oops, I just broke my pencil. On the other side, we're going to want to mark another line that's also a 1/4 inch. Let me go ahead and turn it around. And then we'll mark it like so. And then we'll take our pencil and make another line right there. So now we're going to take this flat quilter's pin, hold that part, and then hold this part. And what we're going to do is we're going to sew down this outer line and this other outer line. We're not going to sew down the middle, but on these two lines right here, okay? We're not going to sew down that middle line, but we're going to sew on this one and on that one, from here down to here and so forth. And we want to do this with all of them. So we're going to mark down the centers a 1/4 inch over, and then a 1/4 inch over to the other side, and those are going to be our lines that we're going to sew. So I'm going to get all of my little squares, mark them and pin them before I start sewing. I'm going to do the same thing to all of these except for the 3 1/2. So I'm going to pull those out of the way. Okay, so now I know that I just need one dark and one light to create my little squares. Okay, I'll be back as soon as I've marked them all and I've gone ahead and I've sewn also down the sides here on all of them, and then we'll be cutting them in half. Now what I'm doing is I'm now placing my straight edge against that center line, and then my cutter will go down right between that and cut these in half. So that's what I'm going to do with the rest of them. Cut them in half just like that, right between the two seams that I have made right there. And now I've got these two pieces, which I will then open up, and then I'll have a little square. But first I have to iron these. So let me go ahead and cut these out, and then we'll iron them, and then we'll get to the next step. All right, so we've got our little triangles right here. So now what we want to do is we want to press these first. Make sure that the thread is ironed into the fabric there. So now we're just going to carefully open them. We're just going to spritz them a little bit with a little bit of water. Let's get that open. Just a little bit. And then we're going to put this right on there, and then just find where it opens up right on that seam that I made. And then I just want to press down on it. I don't want to iron it and do this number here, because when the fabric gets warm, what happens when you move it around, you end up stretching it. So we don't want to do that. We just want it flat, little squares, and then just do that. This one's already been ironed on the outside, so I'll just open it up. A little spritz there, and I'm just finding right the little edge, and just carefully iron. And okay, so now we want to put our little squares here for this one block together. These are going to be my center pinwheel, if you will. So I want to put the tan against the blue. Always like that. And like that. The center creates that little pinwheel that I want it right in the middle. Okay, so then the outers have the darks, let's see, opposite this way. And let's find it just like that. And I think it's like that. We're getting these two lights together right in the middle. Let's see. Yeah, that's what's happening right there. There we go. Like that. So then we're creating this star points on the outer. And then of course the little corners, we're adding this right here. Okay, so we want to start sewing. So we want to start in the middle. So I want to sew this to this, and then I'll add this to this, and then that to that. So we start in the middle. We're going to grab these two, put them together, make sure that the seams align. Okay. And they're going to get sewn this way. Because remember, they were like this. Let's make sure. Yep. We're like this. And we want to sew them a 1/4 inch. All our seams are going to be 1/4 inch. So we're going to start off with those. And what I do is I just lay out my whole pattern again over and over. So I'm going to go ahead and put these like that, move them off to the side, these like that, move them off to the side, these like that, move them off to the side. So right now I want to sew like that. So I want to make sure I put my pin in the direction that I'm sewing. So I don't want to confuse myself by putting my pin like that. I'm going to put it in the way that I'm going to sew. And then once I have it on my sewing machine, I can line them up a little bit better because they are not lining up right now. I want to make sure that this seam is aligned with this one on this other side. Be careful that you don't lose the way that you were going to be doing this. I'm just going to check it one more time here. Yep. Okay. So I've spritzed them with a little bit of water. Press down to bind that seam that you've made. And now you can open them up. And right in the middle, just iron flat down. Do the same to the other piece. Try not to drag the fabric or stretch it. These are the little pieces that are going to go together right here. We'll be sewing them like that, 1/4 inch in. So they'll be meeting up like that to create that little pinwheel in the middle. But before we do that, we got to put the other parts. So our other parts were these. Let's do it this way. And these. So now I want to pin this. Let's make sure. Yeah. Actually, it's like this. We want that green in the middle. Like that. Okay. This dark against this here. We're going to pin that right there. pin those. Another like that. And that right over here. Oops. And then this one over here. Okay. Keeping in mind that pattern, we have these. This was going to go in the outer end. Like so. So we want to get these two together. Make sure they match. Like so. And we're going to save these for just a moment here on the side. Oops, this one over here. And then we want to do the same, which is the opposite of that. Get those two together and pin them. So now we want to do 1/4 inch seam here, 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 everywhere that we have a pin. And then we'll open them up. Well, first we'll iron the seam down, and then we'll open them up and iron them flat like we did with these two pieces. And then once I have these two opened up and ironed, then I'll grab the blues, and on each end I will add that, and I'll do this to the others as well. Okay? Here is my completed Bright Star block, and as I said, I'm going to do 4 of these, so I have 3 more to go. So I'm going to get cracking on that. But as you can see, here is the block. It looks pretty good. I'm pretty proud of it. I'm not a professional quilter, as I said. I do need a lot of practice, but I think it looks pretty good. Now, a few years back, I did lap quilts for everyone in my family. I think I may have made maybe 12 or so little blankets, and they all still have these little lap blankets, and they're in pretty good condition, and they actually, you know, they were made with love. So that's all I can say to that. And I feel like this is going to be made with love as well. I'm putting lots of it in there for my grandbaby. So okay, so I've got 3 more blocks to do, and then I shall be back to show you the next steps. my 4 blocks. It is now the next day. I continued last night with what I was doing and I ran out of thread, and I figured, okay, that's the time to go ahead and stop. I'll refill in the morning and start over. So that's what I've done today, and I pretty much had these all these almost put together. I just had rows done, so then all I came this morning and put my rows together to create the block on these other 3, because I had already completed this one. Okay, so I've decided that I want my whole quilt to be 36 by 36 inches. Now, it might turn out to be a little bit bigger. I don't want it to be anything smaller than that. So that's what I'm gonna go with, 36 by 36. So I've gone ahead and I placed these blocks on my grid. My grid is 35 inches by 23. So I'm going to be using the longer part of my grid to do all my measuring, and because I do have 1.25 inches on each side of my grid to work with, I can figure out my 36 inches off of this. Okay, but because these are so big and I don't want to put the camera too high and too far away, I'm going to go ahead and pretend that these 4 little squares are my big blocks. Okay, these are going to be representing the blocks that I created. Now, when I put these on my grid to measure out, I decided that I needed 4 inches between my blocks. So they needed to be, 4 inches apart, like so. But because I'm working at a smaller scale, I'm just putting them together like this, okay? We're going to pretend that that's, 4 inches. So the 1 inch is representing that. So basically, what I need is 2 inches more on each of these blocks. And I'm going to do 2 inches more going this way and that way, but I'm also going to do it on their outer part and on this other outer part as well. So 2 inches around. I need to make it bigger. Now, to make it 2 inches bigger, I'm actually going to go 2.5. Why? Well, I need a 1/4 inch to go into this, to get sewn into this. So I'm gonna lose a 1/4 inch there. And then when I bring whatever I added to this one and then to this one together, I need that extra 1/4 inch also for another seam. That's why I'm going 1/2 inch. So I need to figure out something that will be 2.5 inches wide. Now, let me put these out of the way, because last night I was thinking about it, and I still have these fabrics. Let's see. I also have this one, and I have, sorry about all that noise, I have this one that I haven't used. Kind of want this one to kind of go around the very outer edge, because I do want to save this for some curtains. So I just want to put a little bit into my blanket of this fabric, and that everything will coordinate somehow. So I was thinking about it last night and what I wanted in the middle, and I thought I would do like a lightsaber kind of a look. So I'm thinking about doing a strip of black to a certain point according to the length of this. Let's make it really thin, like, just a point, like this is the handle of the lightsaber, and then this is the rest of it. But I don't know if I want it to go all the way around. So, but I'm gonna go ahead and work that out, and then I'm gonna see how that looks. So I'm gonna do a 2.5 width strip and another 2.5 width strip, and let's see how much length we're looking at here. We're looking at 12.25. Okay, so now I've got to figure that out. 12.25. Let me go off a little bit and think about that, and then I'll let you know how long I cut this and then how long I cut these. The widths will be 2.5 inches, but we'll figure out the length in just a moment. All right, so I've been doing some drawing here, deciding what I was going to do, the effect that I wanted, like a lightsaber, and I decided that I was only going to do it on 2 opposite sides, and then the other 2 opposite sides I will do something else to my block. I didn't want like too much red in the blanket, so I think just one with a little bit of black on each side would be great. And then I think I'm going to either use this brown on this opposite side of the squares, or maybe this, I think I'm going to use the brown. Okay, so we'll figure that one out later. So I decided that I was going to go 2.5 inches wide on both pieces. I figure out that this one is going to be 3.5 inches and this is going to be 9.25 inches, and that'll give me a 1/4 inch off of this one and a 1/4 inch off of this one to sew into each other. So in the end I will have 12.25, which is the length of my squares. Get my pins. I'm going to take these and just on one end, I don't even think I need to pin them, but I'm going to go ahead and do that anyway. Okay, so then I'm just going to sew there. Okay, so I've done these now and I've sewn them as I said I would, and I want to put them on opposite ends of my block. So I want to put one here and I want to put one on the other side. Let me move this a little bit. But this time I want to turn this part of what is my lightsaber to the other side and put it right on there. Okay, so then these are obviously going to get turned in, facing right sides together and right sides together. I'm going to sew 1/4 inch, 1/4 inch, press or iron down, then I can open them up and iron them open so that I end up with a block like this one right here. Now to this one now, I want to add 2.5 inches on this side and also on this side. So I decided that I'm going to use the brown. So I've gone ahead and I've already cut my strips. And these I had to cut them at 16.5 because now this block is longer. So then I'm going to sew these, and look how pretty that looks. I'm going to sew these onto here, of course, turning them in just so their right sides are facing. Sew them 1/4 inch on each side, press, open, and press again, and that will give me this block here. And I can't tell you how important it is to iron as you're doing your blocks. I think this looks really, really pretty. I believe I'm going to use this fabric next to put in between. I think it's going to look really nice with all of my blocks. But first, let me go ahead and finish all of them. I already have 2 completed blocks right here. And then I can do the next step. All right, everyone, I have completed my 4 blocks here that I wanted to create. I have measured them and they are 16.5 by 16.5. Now, I said that I wanted my blanket to be at least 36 inches. So, this is what I'm going to do. These are 16.5 and I'm going to put 2 side by side. But what I want to do, let me move these out of the way here. What I want to do, these are going to be side by side and I'm going to repeat the same step. Let me move the camera back a little bit. I'm going to repeat the same step with my other 2 blocks. So whenever I do this, I'm going to do the other ones. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to actually turn one of them this way so that the designs are alternating. See? Okay, I probably should put my camera further back, but we'll work with what we have. As I get bigger, I'll pull the camera further back. Okay, anyway, this is what I'm going to do. So now I want to go ahead and put some fabric between, and then of course I'm going to want to put some fabric on the other ends as well as this other end and as this other end. But first I'm going to worry about between 2 blocks. So what I want to do is I'm going to go ahead and cut another strip at 2.5 inches to fill between, and this time I'm going to use this fabric. So 2.5 because 1/4 inch goes into the seam when I sew it, and then another 1/4 inch will go into this other seam when I sew it. All right, everyone, I have completed the 2 pieces, or actually 4 pieces, and I've put them together and created 2 longer pieces, or like rectangles. And now I want to join these 2 together with that same fabric right here that I used in the middle for both, and I want to now put that down the middle here as well as on the side here and on the other side as well. So I've got to measure the length and cut it at that length by 2.5 inches, which is the same measurement that those are. So I'm going to cut 3 strips at the length by 2.5 inches. All right, and I'll be back once I've got all that put together and ironed out. And I can't stress how important it is to iron out every little thing as you're working, because you get a nice, straight, hopefully even pieces. All right, so there we go. I've done the middle strip and then the two sides there. Completed that. And that attaches all the blocks together. But now I've got to put that same blue along here and also along that other end to make it a complete square for our little baby quilt. So I just got to measure that, cut out the strips. Again, they're going to be 2.5 inches wide. By the way, this turned out to be 44.5, I believe. Yeah, 44.5. So now I just got to measure this and make sure the other end is the same and cut those strips at 2.5 inches wide, put them on, sew them and iron them, and then I shall be back. And I am now moving on to my ironing board, actually, to get this all nice and done, because that little board I was using was not enough. Okay, we're almost done with this blanket. Of course, we got to put the batting and the other fabric that goes on the other side and do a little bit of quilting. That's it. All right, everyone, I have finished putting all the blocks together. I think it looks really pretty. I love this blue on the outline here and circling or squaring off every one of those blocks. I think it made a nice outer trim for that, and the little stars really stand out, and it will be a lot of blue in that room. Now on the other side of this blanket, I'm going to be using this fabric, and I believe I showed that to you up close. It is a nice soft, kind of plushy feeling, kind of velvety soft fabric, but it has these little stars on it, and I thought this was perfect for the baby Star Wars theme. I've got my batting here ready. And then I'm going to bind it by using this yarn. I'm going to do what my grandmother used to do, and in little spots like the little center there, maybe at the little points or several places around the blanket, I'm going to put this through, bring it back up, make a little knot, and then leave a little bit of a string hanging off. I think that looks really cute, so I'm going to use that idea. Another idea would be to, you know, make yourself a little pattern where you want to sew over it with a sewing machine and do the quilting, or you could do it by hand. I'm going to do it with yarn. Alright everyone, I have trimmed all the way around my little blanket. I've given it about 2 inches of slack, this and this, so then I can just do a little tiny fold and then roll it over, and that'll get sewn as a trim, as I showed you earlier. I've gone ahead and I've also pinned it in several areas along the edge and in the middle areas, like right here on the star, and then down the center, just to make sure that it all stays in place. And I'm going to go ahead and start using my yarn and my needle and start sewing in those little spots that I told you I was going to do. Okay, pulling it through again. The fabric underneath is kind of thick, so it's a little hard getting this through there, but it's coming through. Okay, so now I'm just going to remove the needle so I can decide how long I want these. Just a couple of inches, and then I'm just going to knot it. All right. I'm not going to remove any of these pins that I have around, only because I want to make sure that my fabric doesn't shift in any way. I'm going to do the center of every one of my blocks right here, just like I did this one. And then I'm going to pick other little spots, probably the very center of the quilt and several spaces here, and then maybe the little corners is what I should do of the block, like the corners up here somewhere, or maybe on the inside here, just to make sure that it's holding on, so that if we ever decide to wash this, the inside of the batting on the inside will not move around and they get bunched up in a little corner somewhere, as it usually happens when the batting is not sewn onto everything. So that's what I'm going to be doing. I'm going to be sewing with the yarn, and I shall continue, and once I've got some a lot of these done, I will be back so then I can go ahead and start doing the edging over here. Okay, so now I am just folding over the edge just a tiny bit and then bringing it over and then pinning that down. Okay, and I've pinned it over here and I pinned it here. Now I'm going to pin it right in the middle. A little pin there. Okay, and then I'll go over a bit to the end over here. Let's move this over. And then fold right between those two pins and pin that as well. And I've done that all the way along this edge already, and I've done it on the opposite edge. So now I want to turn this around to this end, and I start right in the middle. Do my little bit of a fold here, bring it up, pin that down, another fold right here, bring it over, pin that down, and then right between the two, pin that, and then I'm getting out already at the end here where I have this little corner. So I'm going to go down a bit, pin that down. I'm going to trim off this excess here, a little triangle off of that, a little tiny more there. Fold these two. Okay, so I'm just going to pin this one down. And then I can now fold this in. Now, when I do this on my sewing machine, these corners, I'm actually going to do them by hand because there's a little bulk there. And if I try putting it through my sewing machine, it might all just slide out and then it just won't sew right. So I'm just going to go ahead and just get as close to the corner as I can. Do the same thing on the other side. And then this last little bit right here, I'm just going to do that by hand. And I will do that to all the corners. So now I've just got the opposite end or the opposite edge of this one to do. And then I'm going to get it into my sewing machine. When I have finished sewing all the way around my whole quilt here, and now I've just got the little corners that I have to finish off. I've already done the other 3 corners, so I've only got 1 more to do here. I just want to tuck this little end here like that. Let's do this again. Fold it in like so. Okay, so now I just get some thread on a needle here, and I've doubled the thread and just knotted it. Do some nice tight stitches so that the thread won't show. And because we have a fuzzy little fabric, it kind of gets hidden in there. So I'm just going through one side and then grabbing the other side. And I'm going to do this all the way down to the corner, and then from this corner down to here where it's already sewn here. I don't want that flipping around, maybe getting caught or pulled on something. Just making it easier for this whole little corner to become unsewn. So I'm just going to finish it off all the way down. All right, everyone, my baby blanket is complete. This is my Star Wars baby inspired crib quilt that I've made for my grandbaby, and I'm very, very happy with it. I'm very proud of it as well. I hope that you enjoyed watching this. I'm going to give myself a big old thumbs up. I hope that you too will give me a big old thumbs up. I hope that you will subscribe if you haven't already done so. And thank you to everyone who has been subscribing. And make sure you leave a nice comment down below. I will continue my Tuesday craft videos by doing projects that I'm going to be using to decorate for the baby shower. So let me know if you're excited for that. And well, I know that I am. So make sure you also share on your social medias. And as always, enjoy.